Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One guy living in the garage.
Alright guys, it's officially sweet November. November 1st, we got a west wind, about 40 degrees, pressure's 30.2. I'm back in Possum Run. This is my 5th or 6th time sitting here. I hit him. Oh my god. My penetration wasn't good. I don't like that at all. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Nailed it.
Woo! Put a lot of work into this one, boys. Every single one of us put a lot of work into this one. Damn. I did hear him crash.
Yeah, you did.
We sat in that shop for 4 hours for nothing. He didn't go. All right, guys.
$3.
One day,
Same tree.
same tree.
Oh my god, I'm so.
Woo!
Holy shit! Get a shot of these.
2 farms this year. Number 1 is done.
Did you say bye, Kevin?
I did. I already did. Bye, Kevin.
Bye, Kevin.
Bye, Kevin. Bye, Kevin. Smoked it, buddy. Look at that. You destroyed it.
Joey takes
The
all
shop
Yeah.
is closing up.
Make sure he takes all his right antlers.
All right, guys. Deer Shop Podcast, episode 39. We are talking about the Traveler today.
So we're taking a break
yes.
from the spring that
Yes.
we've been pounding the past couple weeks.
Yeah, our last 4 or 5 podcasts have all been about fishing or turkey hunting, maybe a little bit about shed hunting, but we are breaking that up and we are doing another Legendary Deer Stories. This will be our 3rd edition of the Legendary Deer Stories. The first 2 were Hook and Freak Daddy, which are our 2 most famous deer by far. And I would say the Traveler's probably the 3rd most famous deer in our group. There's bigger deer that have been killed, obviously, but this buck started a pretty good run that we had in 2019, and it really kind of invigorated our filming and our outdoor content.
Yeah, it was the first big buck, first mature buck that we videoed, that we got on YouTube.
Yeah, we had, prior to that, there was a lot of videos, but there wasn't much in the way of killing bucks on film, especially good-sized bucks on film. This was the first one for that, and it just started a steamroll.
And that was a heck of a year, too.
Yeah. So that year, Dylan and Kasich actually already had bucks on the ground. They weren't filming, but we helped with the recoveries. Dylan's was like a 158. Kasich's was a 173 or somewhere around there, his biggest buck.
Yeah, huge.
Shot it from the ground, and we'll probably get him on to tell that story this fall when the time is right. But I killed Traveler on November 1st. Doug killed the next week in Indiana, public land, and I almost killed. I was at full draw on a buck. Matt got run over by a buck that week.
Mm-hmm.
Doug did kill. That was a great trip. That was our first public land deer hunting trip, and it went extremely well. Came back, a week went by, Nick killed Ned. Me and Nick were in the tree filming together. He killed his, is that still his biggest buck? Yeah, that's still his biggest buck. The one he shot this year was like 1 or 2 inches smaller.
Yeah,
But Nick killed Ned on film the week after that. Then we went down to West Virginia and filmed the Buck Tree episode, which is probably our most famous West Virginia episode. I killed my big 10-point down there, which is the biggest deer we've ever killed at deer camp.
130 incher.
Yeah, it was just a wild run there, 2019. And
was that the year that I wounded Shorty or not? I can't remember.
No, you wounded Shorty the year prior, 2018.
Okay.
Which, man, that hurts. Like,
Yeah,
looking
that
back,
still
that
hurts.
hurts so bad.
Never found him.
Never found him.
Never saw him again.
Never saw him again. But yeah, that deer. I mean, that deer started everything for us, basically, when it comes to the quality YouTube content. He wasn't a deer, and if we want to we'll just go right into the story here. He wasn't a deer that was on film much the year before. There was a couple different deer he could have been. There was one that showed up on Christmas. The rack was very similar, Christmas of 2018. He actually showed up on the South Farm, which is about half a mile away from where I ended up killing him.
Which it would have been kind of hard to tell because he would have been 3.5 that year.
Yeah.
And
We think he was a big 4.5 the year I killed him.
Just a basic 9 or 10 point.
Yeah, and we had another deer that was 3 miles away that was kind of similar looking. You know, we know deer travel around a lot, so we weren't sure, but there was no guarantee on what deer he actually was. In the wintertime like that, you know, December, January, February, we have a lot of deer that'll show up and feed. Maybe deer that we know from a couple miles away, or maybe deer completely new to us. They'll show up and feed late season wherever the hot food source is, and then not necessarily stick around for the next year. We've had a lot of one and dones. But sometimes they do stick around. So if it was the Christmas Eve buck, which I kind of tend to believe it was, he ended up sticking around, coming back towards this area in 2019, that summer. We had a lot of good bucks. I mean, 2019 was the heyday of good bucks. He was the number one on the farm, and we'll kind of get into that eventually, but there was a bunch of other shooters. And that's that early summer, you know, May, June, early July, when the deer are still developing their racks. It's kind of hard to tell them apart, especially in June when it's just brow tines and main beams. But we had a bunch of mature bucks on camera using our North Farm that year. And then towards the end of summer in July, he started really hammering our one mineral lick. And he was on it about once or twice a week. And he almost always hit it in daytime. I think actually every video, I think I had a white flash camera that only took daytime video and then, you know, white flash pictures at night. And I'm pretty sure the majority of our content was him during the day. So he was bedding somewhere close by.
Very close by.
Using this mineral lick regularly. I got some really good video of him just, you know, licking the hell out of this stump, which is still my favorite mineral lick and one that we still use to this day. Even though this was, 5 summers ago now? 2019 would be 5? 4?
Yeah.
5?
This
2024, so.
This will be the 6th summer since then, right?
Something like that.
19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah,
6 summers since then. That's crazy. But he was definitely using that area quite heavy. And then a situation unfolded. And we started calling him the Traveler because he was traveling around. We had some neighbors getting him. The Wild Tine TV boys, which are located about a mile and a half from here, one of their guys, he had him on trail camera hitting his mineral lick. I'm not sure exactly how often, but enough to where he was posting them on the internet.
Yeah, so that's when he kind of got his name.
And they weren't called Wild Tine TV back then. I have that in my notes here. What were they called back then?
I don't remember.
Like they were called like
at this point they were like 16-year-old kids, so they were just trying.
6 years ago they were 12.
Yeah, so.
They're only 18 to 21 now.
That's true.
But anyways, they had him on camera, so that's kind of how he got his name. And that happened because we had the infamous cowgate. So if you watch our 2019 videos, it gets hammered a couple times. Oh, that is also one thing I forgot in our intro. Might as well go back real quick. There are 3 videos on YouTube that I will link in the description that have this story on it.
If you want all this information.
Yeah, if you want to visually watch it. I have a full Traveler episode for season 4. I have an SBO mini-sode, which is just the hunt, just pure hunt, no music, no nothing, and the recovery. And then I have a video breakdown of the tactics I used to kill him, which I did a couple years ago. So if you want to visually watch any of that, I'll have them linked. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Any feedback on the podcast apps or YouTube is good for us. I forgot to mention that part before, but if you watch our videos from 2019, cowgate happened. So the neighbors had a herd of cattle They only had 3 or 4 that year, and they
had the fence was in real bad shape.
Well, I think a tree fell on it is what
Yeah.
set it off. Actually, even though the fence was in kind of bad shape, a tree fell down and created a gap, and 4 beef cows got out. And they just happened to, the area that this buck was using heavily was right on the north side of their pasture. And when those beef cows got out, they crushed my food plots, ate my screening down. They were mowing down the beans.
Yeah, they had to eat thousands of dollars worth of beans.
The farmer actually, I think, charged the family because the beans got destroyed. I got videos. I had a camera on a oak tree that got a lot of footage of the Traveler. It was an early summer scrape, and they were eating the acorns. It was just a great location. It still is. The cows were destroying the branches on that.
Anything they could reach, they were ripping down.
They were taking the acorns down, eating those. And the two key parts were these cows were bedding on the ridge where the Traveler was bedding and spending his time. And because of that, every day the neighbor and their friends and us, we were helping them out. We were going in and trying to kind of corral these cattle back towards the pasture. And I have trail camera videos and pictures of just all day long neighbors walking around in the woods. And obviously that kind of pressure is a problem on a deer.
Yeah, so they ended up being out for what, like 2 weeks maybe?
Yeah, they were out for 2 or 3 weeks. And they eventually, one of the other farmers about a mile away left his pasture gates open without any cows in said pasture. And one morning he came out, and he has since passed away. Rest in peace, old man Dylan. But he left his cow pasture open, and one morning he came out, and the cows were just in his pasture, so he just walked over, closed the gate, and then they were able to load them up. And the great part was, as soon as those cows were back in the pasture, all the deer just came right back.
Mm-hmm. So as soon as that pressure disappeared, those deer came right back.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back, and a couple other of the bucks we were chasing.
Yeah, the bucks so if you're watching on YouTube, we got a pile of sheds here on this table of all the deer that were using the farm that year. I'm definitely going to get into it more when I talk about the actual hunt.
Yeah.
But they came back, the deer came back right away, and then I was using cell cams, and that was the first year we were using cell cams, and I had all my Browning video cams. I had them on scrapes and on the bean fields, all in his home range there, and I was getting some pretty good trail camera, footage and media of him almost on a nightly basis.
A lot of it in the beans.
He was hitting this one particular scrape. I had him scrapping with other bucks. He's eating in the beans. He was eating our food plot pretty heavy that year. It was just a beautiful year for trail cameras and mature bucks. And it was a lot of fun that September, and going into October. As soon as the season rolled around, this is when I'll let Isaac talk for a little bit. Isaac actually ended up having the first encounter, and I'll kind of let him go.
Yeah, so I was hunting. It was probably the first or second week of the season. Probably the first week of the season.
I think it was the 6th.
I don't know the exact
October
date.
6th.
So about the end of the first week of the season, we still had soybeans on the fields, and they were still green. So it was one of those rare occasions where the soybeans were in late for whatever reason, and they were still really green. Like they weren't even close to turning yet. And I decided to hunt one of our enclosed radixes. I think this was the first year we were using those as well.
Yeah, definitely the first year we had the radix.
So we had a radix set up between our food plot, which I think at that point was just like a fall blend, and it wasn't really fully mature yet at that point in October.
Yeah, it wasn't the year we did the mega plot and extended the size of it. It was still only about 1.5 acres, maybe around an acre.
And it was a little bit of clover, maybe some chicory and stuff, but kind of a late season plot. So they weren't hitting that food plot very much during the day. But I was set up in the corner of this food plot overlooking the beans as well, and the beans were about 50 to 80 yards out. So if we would have known, we probably should have known that these deer were hitting the beans and not the food plot. So the one...
Well, interestingly enough, there's a stand on the other side of the field across from you.
Which, remember, I hunted the day before?
Yeah, and if you would have been in that stand, you still probably wouldn't have got a shot.
No, because
the way he came out. Yeah,
right in between. So the night before I hunted the stand across the field, didn't see him, but I saw a couple of the other bucks we were watching. One of the younger bucks that was right on the fringe of being a shooter until he got all broken up. Which I don't know if that's a buck we ended up chasing in the future. You remember him?
So, this is a perfect little side story note. That's the deer that I think Megatron is.
Okay.
I do believe that deer is Megatron, but I don't think
5 years later.
Yeah, but you're getting your years mixed up. That busted up buck didn't come out that night. There was a deer that had the velvet hanging off of him. Yeah. It was a nice.
I'm mixing up my buck kill. With
and they were all in the same area. But yeah, the broken up buck was a couple years later.
Okay.
But the buck that did come out with him. he was a really nice like basket 8. I mean, he probably only scored 60 or 70, but he had velvet that was like dried and hanging off his rack. Very dark shaped rack.
Yes, now I remember.
And he came out first, and we knew he was hanging out with Traveler.
Yeah, so I'm hunting in the raddocks. These deer start coming out. Where they're coming out into the field, if I remember right, was about 60 yards, 50 to 60 yards.
Yep.
That smaller buck comes out. I think there was another one. So the buck that came and almost touched in the front, I'm pretty sure he came out as well. Wasn't a shooter, but he was like a 2 or 3 year old.
We saw him dead hanging up in a guy's garage while he smoked a doobie that year. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
Like 3 or 4 miles from here. Walked into a garage, side story again. Walked into a garage. We were doing some levy campaigning for the fire department.
Yeah, so we were going
in November.
door to door.
And we walked in the garage, and this deer that we had watched all summer was hanging up in this garage, and the dude was smoking a J. Mm-hmm. And we talked to him for a little bit, and then we left.
Yeah, and that buck was unique.
3 miles, at least 3 miles away.
His tips pointed right together.
Yeah, at least 3 miles away. Yeah. Regardless.
They
came out.
Back to the story, they came out. So I'm filming them, and then all of a sudden I pan over, and boom, there's Traveler eating beans at, I think it was 52 yards. So between me trying to get the video camera on him, I ended up getting the video camera on him.
You did a good job for the camera you had, too.
And light was really dwindling at that point.
Yes.
And this was a shot that I felt like I was comfortable taking. In hindsight, probably wouldn't have been a good idea to take the shot. But between trying to get the camera ready, trying to get a shot, trying to get drawn, he ended up going out of range.
Yeah, there was something that kind of spooked him.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't remember if I drew back or not. I don't think I did.
The deer kind of looked up and then trotted off into the middle of the field and then started feeding again.
Yeah, and it could have been possibly some wind issues too because they were to the east of me. Yeah, and I'm sure in that situation
Northwest
we had
wind.
some sort of northwest wind. But anyways, I couldn't get a shot. Ended up filming them. Awesome footage.
Yep.
Hunted him out of that same stand a couple more times the next couple weeks. Never saw him again. And he kind of went MIA after that for like 2 weeks, right?
Because like that second and third week of October, I would just get him at night. I think there was one situation where I had him in daylight, but I think it was prior to your hunt. Mm-hmm. Really early in the morning, bean field edge. He kind of went MIA doing his traveling around thing, and then I got a good set of videos of him, and I don't think I knew I even had the videos because they were conventional trail cameras that last week of October. Yeah. I ended up killing him on November 1st. That last week of October, he showed back up, but I don't think I knew he showed back up. I was hunting the deer that we have here on this table, fat bastard, no brows. I wanted the Traveler, but I just didn't think it was possible at that point.
And our network kind of changed on how we were hunting because as soon as the second week of October hits, those beans go brown, they go dormant. They don't really eat those beans much. Then they harvested the beans really quickly after that.
Yep, they harvested them quickly.
They did leave.
The farmer
some
left
up.
one strip in the middle of this one field, and that's one of the places I got Traveler
and
in
I
daytime.
think that's because a lot of those beans were the cow damage, so they just left them up for
because they were
purposes.
real short.
Yeah. So you got that one real cool video then at October 21st or something.
Yes. That was actually, I think that was like the 27th or 28th.
Okay.
It was like 2 or 3 days before I killed him.
But him chasing does in daylight in the middle of this bean field. And
Yeah,
where he was, there was no way we could have hunted him there.
No, I had to stand on the north side of that field, but he would have winded me regardless of whatever wind I decided to hunt. That field's impossible to hunt, so we never do. It's there's bedding on both sides, so it's really hard to hunt that field. We might try to find a way to get a stand up there eventually, but so I went on a streak of hunting heavy on the 30th, the 31st, and the 1st.
And you weren't exactly hunting him. You were hunting this other
Yeah,
buck.
these deer that were on the table here. And it was a good 3-day stretch. I hunted the same stand, a stand we call Possum Run, 3 days straight. The first day, the 30th, I had an encounter with no brows, which is this deer right here. He's probably a high 130s, 10 point. He had a broken brow on his right side and a broken G4, but just a very nice deer. This was the second year we had him on camera.
4.5, 5-year-old.
Yeah. I hunted. I saw this guy following does at a distance off to my west that evening, so I went back in on the 31st, and that's when I had an encounter on Halloween night with Fat Bastard here. And I think that's the side. Yep, that's the side from this year.
He's a buck that didn't grow much.
Yeah. So he I hunted that stand for 2 reasons. One, it was hot. Two, if you hold this other one here, Isaac, on October 31st, so Halloween of the year before, when he was holding that rack Isaac's got in his hands right now, I had an encounter with him at a distance. He was on the edge of the field.
So this is 1 year younger than that.
Yep.
One?
And then he had this rack on his head the year I killed Traveler, and I had an encounter with him again, same day of the year, October 31st, Halloween. He was on the same exact path that No Brows was on the day before, following does. I think I might have got like a glimpse of him on video, but it was real tough. He was through the trees. There was still kind of a decent amount of foliage on. And the wind was coming out of the northwest, so both these guys were 100 yards upwind of me and had no clue I was there, so I had no problem going back again that third night being November 1st.
Let's just talk about this deer for a second. I know a lot of people. So this deer, fat bastard, he was a giant body. So we're not quite sure
he
how
was
old
a giant body when he
was.
first showed up with this. Actually, I don't have any sheds from him, but the year prior to what Isaac's holding, so we have 3 years of history with this deer. The year prior to that, we had him on camera as a 3-year-old, and he was so fat, and he had just a normal 3-year-old rack for around here, probably 110 inches. He was a 10-point or a 9. He had a G4 at least on the one side. Just a very typical 110-inch, 9-10-point rack, but he probably, as a 3-year-old, was weighing 180, 200. I mean, he was a very big body.
His body
3-year-old.
was huge.
But his face was short, and his rack was kind of spindly like a 3-year-old's is.
But then he jumped up to this rack.
He lost his G4s that second year. Just a nice 8-point rack, probably 127 to 131.
Yeah, something.
Body was huge, again, as a 4-year-old. And then that last rack here, when he was a 5-year-old, body was outrageous. Rack was probably high 130s,
His
low
right
140s.
side stayed almost the same, probably about 2 inches bigger.
We've never taped any of these sheds, so he probably scored 140.
He has exactly the same layout and everything. Just has a little bit longer of a G3 and a G2, and then the brow tine probably has half an inch. So that's bizarre that he grew so minimal from 4 to 5.
Yeah, and we have, so many sheds and trail camera videos, and I have one trail camera picture of him in velvet back in 2018.
But he did not spend the
or
summer.
2017 when he was 3. It was the only time I ever had him in velvet. And then, he was a fall deer. But, he walked out of my life on October 31st, and then Traveler on November 1st. I got in early. I remember the leaves were still kind of green, but it was November 1st. It was cool out. It was cold that day. I remember the temperatures were probably high 30s, maybe low 40s, high 30s, a little bit of a wind. But it was
perfect November day.
Yeah, pretty chilly. The first real chilly day of the year. I had some does work in from the direction that these 2 other bucks had the days prior. They walked the ridge and they went down in the valley in front of me, which would be to my west. The stand faces directly north, and all the deer come from the west off to my left side. And then kind of early in the night, it wasn't anywhere near last light, I just happened to look up and I seen antlers coming through, and I was trying to get my binoculars, my bow in my hand, and my camera all at the same time. I didn't get a lot of pre-footage of him. He ran around at 100 yards where these bucks had the day before, and I was thinking, God damn it, he's going to do the same thing. But for some reason, in the wind, I remember specifically the wind was pretty west, maybe northwest. I remember for some reason, he turned and he started walking directly towards me with the wind directly at his back. I mean, the wind was directly at his back, and he's walking down an old logging road, which I had already ranged, and I knew that there was a gap in the trees at 37 that I could shoot off the left side of my stand, pretty much directly behind me, but the way my stand was configured, I was very comfortable with it. I just swung my camera around, framed the shot for the whole area, which looking back, I wish I would have zoomed in, but
yeah, because you were zoomed way out.
Way out. I didn't want to miss it. This is like we talked about before. We had never killed a mature buck with our bows on camera yet, so this was something that just had to happen. So I was zoomed out a little bit, and he walked directly downwind, he was coming from upwind with the wind to his back. There's no way he could have possibly winded me. And as soon as he hit my gap, I gave him the meh, and I was already at full draw. And I just settled my pin. It was 37 yards, and I hit the release. And it's weird because the video in real time and in my mind all plays in kind of slower motion than it really
that arrow
is.
sails.
For some reason, it just plays in slow
37
motion.
yards is a heck of a shot in the woods. That's a far shot. And a
It was a
shot
really open shot, though. So, even though the woods had obviously some thickness to them, it was a pretty open shot.
It wasn't like Luke's shot this year where his arrow was bouncing off leaves and stuff.
No, none of that. And I knew I hit him But the problem was, even with the video review, as soon as there's a smack of my arrow hitting him, he spins right.
Turns right
and
around.
goes directly back the way he came. And as he spins, he throws the arrow. So the arrow definitely hits him with a smack. The way that my fletching, so all you could really see with that, how far out I zoomed, was the angle of the fletching, the veins. It appeared high, and he spun and just threw the arrow. The arrow went like 10 feet.
It appeared high,
maybe
and when he
even farther.
spun, it appeared like the arrow was sticking completely out. So it looked
the penetration looked really bad.
It looked almost like he just pure shouldered him.
Yeah, the penetration looked really bad. We've all been there. Like Isaac said, the year before with Shorty, he was there. I had the situation with the hook where I shouldered him, got 4 inches of penetration, and he obviously lived another year. We've all been there, and it's just a sick, terrible gut feeling. I packed up all my stuff, went back. I had to run home and get my computer and bring it back here to the shop. I was pretty down. I mean, those are, an unknown track, an unknown result, even with the camera being on, an unknown everything is very hard to stomach, but it is a lot of fun. It's the most exciting and heartbreaking thing all at the same time.
Yep.
And I was down. I mean, I didn't know what to think. I thought I just completely had fucked this up, that this deer was going to be wounded, get away. The whole, we had already talked about everything that happened up to this point to even have the opportunity.
Yeah, how many years before was the hook situation? 2 years before this?
2016 was Hook.
So 3 years.
So 3 years before this. So I was just down. So I was here in the shop, and actually the deer shop here, the filming studio where we're at, the bar side, wasn't built yet. So we were all on the other side over there.
Yeah, in the butcher shop. It wasn't even barely finished or anything.
No, it was in the very early. We didn't even have the benches built or anything.
Mm-hmm.
We had like doors on sawhorses for tables. It was very early in the deer shop lexicon. I got over there. I started crushing beers, and then crushing beers. That's one regret I have with this video is like, for the recovery and afterwards, I was just absolutely sloshed, and I wish I would have kept my composure a little bit more. But I was just crushing beers.
We sat in there from what time did it get dark? You think 6:30 maybe?
Yes.
So we sat in there for like 4 or 5 hours, just watching this 30-second video clip over and over and over again,
waiting on people and just sitting there giving them some time.
Was it Spaniel we had to wait for?
Waited on Spaniel. Spaniel was getting off work at like...
He was working it was a Friday night football game. So
those get over, 10 o'clock? And then we had to wait for him.
By the time he got home from where he works, it was a while.
I mean, there was a very good crowd of people here. Nick Kasich, AAA showed up. Gore was here. Isaac and Luke, Tyler, Spaniel showed up.
Ethan was in Japan. For some reason, Dylan and Freeman weren't here, and I can't remember. They had reasons. There was a reason why Dylan and Freeman weren't here, and I don't remember what it was. I don't remember either.
But pretty much the entire deer shop crew was here. And eventually we made a decision just to go look for my arrow. And I know Uncle Jay, and I had talked to Jay that night about, what we should do. And, he gave his honest opinion, which is always to back out and wait till tomorrow.
So we've never found a buck the next morning, have we?
Nick's 2022
That's
deer.
right. Okay.
He waited till the
So
next
we've only
morning.
waited once for the next morning.
A couple of Dylans, but that's a story for another day. We made a decision about 5 hours after the shot, 5 or 6 hours, to go in and look for the arrow. So we went back there like we do for all our buck parties of this nature. Looking back, we shouldn't have had as many people as we did. We took the whole crew back there with cameras everywhere.
If it's nighttime, you're going to jump him. You're going to jump him.
But
no difference between 5
you're leaving a
people
lot of scent when you have 10 dudes in the woods. But anyways, we go back there, and also ironic of note, I have a trail camera on the path that leads to my stand, and that night after I had gone in, shot Traveler, and walked out, Fat Bastard walked by.
Yeah, right through the lane.
Right through the lane. About an hour after dark, so I wouldn't have had an opportunity. But he was still rutting in the area, even though I'd shot a buck that night in there. But regardless, we go in there.
At this point, if people have ever searched for blood at night, it's so hard to figure out where the deer was standing.
Yeah,
almost impossible,
especially in the woods. So if you don't
from
have
the ground, if you got up in the stand and looked, you could tell. But from the ground, trying to figure out where that deer was standing
at night,
so you could be searching for 20 minutes and not find any blood because you're purely just in the wrong spot.
We found the arrow first, I remember.
Because it had a luminoc, I think.
Yeah, and the arrow was thrown from the deer. And when we found the arrow, it had blood up the shaft a lot farther than we thought, and it was broke off.
Yeah,
so there was two good things.
12 inches, probably 12 inches up the shaft.
12 inches up the shaft, and it was broke off, which was a good thing, with a Rage 2 blade in him. It took a minute to find where the deer was kind of standing. You could see in the leaves where they'd kicked, where you'd kick the leaves. We started following. I remember the first 20 yards or so was just your typical drop here, drop there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, God, we should probably back out.
Oh, we didn't.
But we didn't. But then about yard 30, floodgates, both sides, which was kind of weird. I think the second side ended up being his mouth, so he was bleeding out his mouth and his right
Yeah,
side,
because we
or
were
his left
seeing
side.
blood separated by like 3 feet.
And it was on the trees. It was chest high on the trees. You didn't even have to bend over to start following it. Trail was probably only 70 yards long. He died literally like half a second after he left camera frame. He just
Pretty much just ran downhill. and died.
catapulted down a hill at the end of this ridge and just died right there. And finding him, that was my first big buck with archery equipment. It was my first filmed buck. Everything about the situation was good, and just seeing that body. Ryan Kasich saw him first, which
And both these deer,
usually always is Ryan who sees him first.
Yeah, so he died in the same creek as my deer a couple years ago died in, and we walked past the deer both times. Because they've been at the bottom of the hill. So
yeah.
you go down the hill, then the deer, I don't know if they just start crawling back up the hill, but when you're following the blood trail, you always walk right past them.
And interesting of note, another tidbit of trivia, where he died is the exact place my buck from 2021, Dad's buck, was standing when I shot him. So the place he died was the place where this buck, one of my other bucks, was standing when I shot him.
Heck of a trail.
But just finding him like that was just the emotion and the relief that comes over you, and it's done. No matter what, from this point on, that deer is yours. He's not getting away. The unknown is over. You killed a big buck on film. It was just a great night.
Yeah, we had some good celebrating. We took some awesome pictures.
Took some awesome. That was, since it was our first major buck killed on film, the whole 9 yards. We had 2 GoPros, a mirrorless camera, and my camcorder in the woods for the
and
recovery.
all sorts of lights and all
phones,
sorts of
and it was something. And we took a lot of media that day. We still use the media for everything that we do. It was just a damn good time. And, it's probably my favorite hunt of all time, one that I'm definitely never going to forget. Things have changed since then. Some things have changed, some things haven't. I'm still using the same bow. That stands still up. I mean, I'm wearing the same camo from then.
We're still hunting in that same general area.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
shot
things.
my buck just 100 yards from there, basically.
Your next 2 bucks that you killed.
3.
3? Is it 3 now? Well, 2 for sure on the same ridge. You killed 2 in a row on the same ridge. The 5x3 and the big 7.
And then the buck this year is 1.
Yeah, 1 ridge over. You killed 2 bucks on that same ridge after that. You were about 200 yards more east, but on the same ridge.
Yep.
And
then you had some encounters this year, buck coming from right.
Yeah, I mean, we
there.
passed. Last year we passed the 8 point there. I don't know how many times. I had encounters with Stanky Lake from Possum Run back when Stanky was running around.
Dad's buck was killed right there.
Dad's buck was killed right there. I still run trail cameras in that same general area. And another interesting note, things change year to year, especially when it comes to sign, deer location, their beds, all this stuff. But every couple years, that ridge will get just tore up with sign, just absolutely tore up. And then a year or 2 go by, and it'll slow way down.
Yeah, this year it didn't really get tore up that much. A little bit, but
there
not
was
a lot.
Right by the stand on Possum Run. I would beg to differ on that. I think this year was more tore up than the last 2 years before. This year was similar to 2019, I think. Because I had a bunch of, me and you went out that one day scouting, found a bunch of rubs, put up a couple.
But it seemed like all the movement was north of that.
There was movement north of that. But I ran cameras on scrapes there on that 2 or 3 different scrapes, and I got all the shooter bucks on those cameras throughout the year.
So one little tidbit on why we call this stand Possum Run.
It's a turkey hunting story, actually.
It's a turkey hunting story. 2018,
the year before that, we were hunting the South Farm and got skunked out. Nothing happening, no birds gobbling, but we started heading back towards the shop here, and we heard gobbling on the North Farm.
So we ran over there.
And on the way there, we took the path that the traveler had walked on to die to head towards this stand. It's an old logging road, and we had to walk over 3 possums. 3 different possums were on the trail.
So we're not sure
just hanging out.
Why they were all there.
They were raiding turkey nests, what they were doing. But these possums didn't run from us. We had to step over them because we're running through the woods last of the Mohican style to get in on this hammering gobbler. Run over 3 possums, get back in the woods. Literally did 2 minutes of calling, sat there for 5 minutes, and blasted the bird. Smoked the shit out of it. But that's why we call it Possum Run. It's had that name ever since 2018. But yeah, that's just, and that's the story of the traveler. Like I said, we have 3 videos you can watch on YouTube if you want a visual guide to all this stuff.
Closing remarks on the fat bastard, since we talked about him a little bit. He's one of the deer that just disappeared on us in the off
There's a great video. Might as well put it in the link too. It's called The Mystery of the Bastard. All the trail cameras, all the encounters from the stand.
Years and years and years of history.
The whole story. I have 4 of his sheds, and they're 4
Did
high
we find
quality
sheds the last year of him?
That is he never showed up after that.
Okay, so
we
we
coming up. So that year I shot Traveler. Fat Bastard lived. Going into the next year, which would be 2020, by far he was going to be number 1. He was already the same size as Traveler pretty much, and he survived. So we were so looking forward to hunting this buck in 2020.
Found his sheds.
He never showed up.
He never came
Just
back.
disappeared.
So we don't know.
Gone forever.
The summer, unless he just moved, or got
Yeah.
hit by a car, something happened that he never came back. Killed by coyotes, died of old age.
Never know. That's
Never
a
know.
shame too, because that story was peaking to be maybe our best. You
Yeah,
know,
'cause
with
2
this
full
amount of
sets.
sheds, and we encountered him while hunting multiple times on video. I mean, the whole thing was perfect.
It was brutal though.
And
Brutal.
he just never showed up. 2020, we'll do a video on the 2020 year eventually here. That's the year I killed Massey. We'll do another legendary deer stories.
What a weird year.
It was a
that
down year. Like, we had plenty of deer that we were patterning on the farm. They just weren't big. They were old, but they weren't big.
I don't even remember hunting one time that year.
So No Brows got killed by Saffel that year, and he was smaller. Remember, No Brows showed up smaller.
So what year was
5x3?
What deer was I hunting?
You were hunting. To be honest, I don't even know.
I don't remember.
The Gimp was around. It was the Gimp's last year. I think you shot at the Gimp and missed him, because that was the year that you passed Dad's Buck and Stanky Jr. when they were smaller.
Yep.
They were not shooters yet. You did hunt a lot because you filmed those bucks a lot, but you just never. I don't think you ever even picked your bow up to shoot at a buck.
No, I don't remember.
The 5x3 was running around as
I'm
just
sure
a
I can
regular
watch
8
videos.
point. That shed I have up there is actually him as an 8 point from that year. I killed Massey on October 28th, which is a pretty famous hunt of mine. And he was a mature, heavy deer that just didn't score very much. He was very narrow, 13 inches wide, just good mass, but no tine length. His G4 was like 3 inches. His G2 was only like 4 inches.
Mm-hmm.
But he had mass. He had a bladed right side. Kind of an interesting deer, but that was just an off year. 2021 was a good one the next year. We'll get into that. That's a Dad's Buck year and Stanky Jr. and Stanky
Year I
Lane
shot
and
my
Stanky
first
Jr.,
big buck too.
the Big Brow 7. Yeah, we'll talk about that year in a future podcast. But
So this was kind of just like a delve into deer season. We're itching. It's April, so it's the worst time for deer hunting.
yeah, because the bucks all have nubs. I'm getting tons of deer on camera right now that just have nubs on their heads.
And
But
this
you
is
can't tell what they are.
And it's the time of year when we're in the woods, we hate seeing deer because they
Yeah.
screw up your turkey hunts.
Yeah, and the shed hunting is pretty much over. Our shed video will be out before you listen to this podcast. Our shed season 2024 video will be on YouTube, so check that out. The shed hunting is pretty much over. We're going to find more sheds while we turkey hunt and while we do some scouting stuff, but the green is really popping up, the grass, the ramps in the woods, the low vegetation. So finding sheds, especially out in the
It
open.
becomes a little bit tougher.
Yeah, out in the open, all the grasses have popped up now, so they're up, 7-8 inches. The finding sheds is pretty much over. Turkey season starts in 2 days, and we're really excited about that. We're going to bring you a ton of that content in the next
You guys
month.
are gonna be filming. There's gonna be some bow hunting
There's
Saturday.
lots
I
of
think.
there's lots of
It's
crazies.
gonna be a good couple weeks.
Turkey Camp Chronicles is going to be a lot of fun. 3 states for sure, possibly 4 if we sneak down to West Virginia, me and Chris, I don't know. But we're going to be slamming Kentucky, Ohio, and Pennsylvania a lot. Dylan already went to Kentucky.
And if anybody's paying attention, you will not see a video from our trout fishing this year because we got rained out. We got canceled.
There will be
But we are going later.
Yeah,
That's what I was gonna say.
we're going trout fishing in May during a turkey. It's going to be a combination turkey hunting, trout fishing trip. So I don't know how we're going to break that down. It'll obviously be part of Turkey Camp Chronicles. If we get enough fishing content, we'll make a trout fishing
We'll
film.
be there 3 days. PA trout fishing, turkey hunting.
And then Ethan and Dylan are planning on going to Kentucky a good amount. We're going to hunt Ohio a good amount. We're going down to the Gore Camp. It's gonna be a good time. So we have a lot of turkey hunting content coming, and then once that's over, once the turkey stuff's over, it starts the slow climb into deer season.
Starting food plots.
June is a slow month for watching deer because we don't know what they are yet. But we'll be doing food plots. We'll be getting our minerals out. We'll be working on. I've been working on farm projects already, and there's a bunch of farm projects we're gonna work on. And then
Our early season this year is going to be busy. We have some videos dropping. Caleb's going to be making a couple videos from our deer this past year.
We're going to have a lot of content in late August and September. We have the deer stories from last year where I can dive deeper into each individual buck. Isaac's got a 4-part Western series he's going to be doing. He's going out West hunting. We'll have whatever Jay ended up doing with his bear turkey hunt coming
I'm
up.
not sure how that's going to go.
And then, deer season opens and we have
The craziness happens when deer season
our usual
starts.
big plans for, we're definitely going to spend a couple days in Indiana. We're definitely going to West Virginia. Probably finally going to deer hunt Pennsylvania. We've talked about it forever.
I'm going to try to shoot a bear in Pennsylvania. That's kind of a goal.
Yeah, we're probably definitely going to do some hunting in Pennsylvania. And then Ohio, I mean, we got, you'll see it in the shed hunting video. There's a lot of bucks that survived or that we think survived this year going into next year.
We have some good prospects. So
there's a lot of good prospects, and we're pretty excited.
Yeah, well, thanks for sticking with us for this episode. Kind of a shoot off from the norm, but we're getting pumped for deer season already.
Yeah, I already got a bunch of deer hunting podcasts planned, so there'll be more deer hunting content coming.
So this is Deer Shot Podcast episode 39, and we are out.
We're out.